Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our last presentation of the temporomandibular joint normal anatomy. We have covered in detail right from the development of the temporomandibular joint when we have discussed the detailed histology of the temporomandibular joint, its disc and its glenoid fossa. Then we have gone for the stage by stage development of the temporomandibular joint. And lastly, we have discussed all the orientation of the temporomandibular joint with reference to its head, with reference to glenoid fossa, and with reference to its disc. Now we are coming to its last part, and that is the temporomandibular joint final conclusion part. In this part, we are going to study the muscle of mastication in detail, and then we are going to study the movement of the temporomandibular joint. There are two muscles of mastication which are called the primary muscles and the secondary muscles. You see the primary muscle, you are well aware of that. These all muscles are directly attached to the ramus of the mandible. Either condyle, either coronoid, either ramus medial side, either ramus outer side. While the secondary muscle of mastication or muscles, secondary muscles, they are attached just at the chin or the lower aspect of the body of the mandible. There are no muscle, any muscle is attached to the ramus of the mandible. So there are two anatomical definite variation. The primary muscles, they are being innervated by the trigeminal nerve, that is the motor nerve, and according to the nerve, these muscles are being supplied. And this is called a hex rule, and all those joints which are being supplied by the same nerve, their muscles are also being supplied by the same nerve. This is the definite rule of the anatomy. While in case of secondary muscles, they have all the muscles, they have the different their muscle supply, as well as they are different movements. And remember these three secondary, mylohyoid and genohyoid and gastric, they are only the muscle which are present at the chin level, and they act only in the movement of the mandible downward, and they have only downward strategy for the movement of the temporal of mastication. They are masseter, temporalis, rator, pterygoid, medial pterygoid. They are capable of giving the different movement, and these different movements are generally anteriorly, posteriorly, superiorly, medially, laterally. These are all the four movements. From first step, we are going to start with the masseter muscle. Masseter muscle, its location is very important. It is one of the biggest muscle by its volume, not by the width, but its volume. It's a double-headed. It elevates the mandible, and its secondary action is protrusion. We will discuss in detail. Its origin is zygomatic process, outer surface, as well as the inner surface. It's in lateral surface of the ramus of the angle of mandible on the lateral side. Ladies and gentlemen, from the zygomatic arch downward to lower border of the ramus of mandible, its orientation is. This muscle fibers actually start from the superior level and move downward and backward to and insert its muscles to the ramus of the mandible. It has two very big parts. Generally speaking, they have the superficial, deep. When it's very deep, or when we see this very deep part, we say that there are three parts: superficial, middle, and very deep. So, but the routine we will find in normal anatomy of the cadaver, we will see only superficial and deep. Look at the cadaver, we will see here that this one is the superficial portion of the masseter muscle, and that is the deep portion. This portion is buccal fat pad. This is just present, just anterior to the masseter muscle. This is the infraorbital nerve, and that is the mental nerve. Here you can see the parotid gland, and then its orientation is the zygomatic process of the temporal bone right here, and that is the zygomatic bone. While having this orientation in your mind, remember very nicely that this position is a transitive position with the movement of the age, and in younger age it is slightly different. In the older age it may slightly change its position forward. While talking on the surface of the mandible, it is 1, 2 and 3. This 3 portion, it is actually the very deep layer of the masseter, which are 2 which we used to describe it as deep, but generally if the third is absent. And first is the main bulk of the masseter muscle. This one attachment right from here, and it is the origin of this portion of muscle. The second portion originates from the middle part, and it is inserted right here. And by the third part, it originates from here and inserted here. So by this orientation, you must get the concept of the movement of the muscle. If we have to shift the mandible forward, then the 1 number fibers will move more fast. That means they will pull the mandible more anteriorly. While in the occlusal plane, we want to fix it more occlusally, we want to adjust, then the number 2 will be most effective fibers, and these fibers will help in occlusion of the mandible. And while 3, it is very important when we want to shift the mandible slightly backward. And this orientation will help with muscle of the temporalis muscle, and it will go for the posterior pull as well. So this is the insertion, and this is the origin. When we see on the cadaver again, and you will see that its associate structure here is, you see, internal jugular vein. External jugular vein, you know, it is very important right here, that is drained from the face and all the adjacent area. That is the facial artery, which is just passing anterior to the masseter muscle. This is the, and the loop is just near to the lower head of the masseter muscle right here. And that is the facial vein, and it goes up to the angle of the nose, and it is drained right from here, and its whole area is being drained, and that is drained into external jugular vein. Then it is the parotid duct, which is right here, which crosses over the masseter muscle. This is the parotid gland right here, which has the posterior lobe, and this is the superficial lobe, and that is the parotid duct, which open into oral cavity crossing the buccellator muscle. That is the masseter muscle here, and that is the retromolar vein right here. It is draining right here. So after getting this concept, take another look. This is the zygomatic process of the what you say temporal bone zygomatic process. That is the temporal muscle right here. This is the parotid gland, parotid duct crossing from the masseter muscle. That is the zygomaticus major muscle, which crosses over the superficial head of the masseter muscle right here. It crosses over to it, and that is the zygomatic bone area. This is the orientation of the whole the muscle of facial expression are right there, and that is the presence of the masseter muscle. With next cadaver, we will see the superficial layer, which is very visible with its white heads, and that is the insertion area. Remember very nicely, from there where there is the origin, generally there is the white striation of the thick muscular layer, and that is the deep layer, and it is on the posterior side. I have told you that generally there are two portion present, and sometimes there are three. And these three, if they are present, these muscles are very strong muscles.
Lastly, we'll add the masseter muscle to the picture.
Now you see here that this is the masseter muscle. Right here, it is attached. And when you see from anteriorly, it is a bulk of the masseter muscle. And you see it has the superior level. If you see it, attachment is on the lateral aspect as well as on the medial side of the zygomatic arch. This is basically the origin of the whole masseter muscle, middle, deep or intermediate portion. Then we see that this portion of the masseter muscle, which is attached right here, it is sometimes not present, which is called as the deep fiber of the masseter muscle. All the masseter muscle is attached on the lateral aspect of the ramus of the mandible like this. Now you see on the medial side, it is the medial pterygoid muscle, and on the lateral side, it is the masseter muscle. And both muscles, they unite with each other at the angle of the jaw posteriorly, and this is called very important structure that is called as pterygomasseteric sling, and that is very important for the good orientation of the mandibular movement. We move to tri-headed. Tri-headed mean anterior, middle, and posterior. Sometimes it is like the masseter muscle. It is also sometimes like the masseter muscle is sometimes had two heads, and these two heads go for the anterior and posterior. But sometimes it is found that they are three-headed. It elevates the mandible. Its origin is temporal fossa, which is a very big fossa. Then is the insertion into coronoid process and the ramus to some extent superior level of the ramus. Now get the orientation right here. It is the eyebrow, that is the lateral canthus of the eye. This is the condylar process of the mandible. This is the coronoid process of the mandible. This is the zygomatic bone which is being cut, and that is the mandibular portion which is right here. Now you see orientation of the temporalis muscle. It is attached to the coronoid process right here. It's a posterior one is big fan, and that is the anterior head of the temporalis muscle. This is whole from starting from here till here. This is whole temporalis muscle. This is posterior, this is anterior, and that is the superficial temporal artery which is crossing over the posterior aspect of the temporalis muscle. That is what the orientation you must have. Another cadaver we will see later on. You see this is the origin two. One is the big one, and that is on the this side. But the two is right here, and it is on the superficial surface. But while we see clinically, the more attachment is of the one on the medial side, as well as for the two, it is also more obvious on the medial side. The temporalis muscle covering the temporal fascia always used to cover this whole area. This is the fascia I will show you later on as well. That is the zygomatic arch. This fascia is continuous with the zygomatic arch. This is the zygomatic bone. This is, you see, the temporalis muscle, and this is coronoid process. This is the mandibular condyle, and here you see superficial temporal artery which is crossing right here, and that is the zygomatic arch. This orientation must be in your mind clinically. When you see the temporalis muscle movement, you must have this orientation in your mind. You see, they are a very good division. This posterior aspect is like here, which have the big vessel, which is called as the superficial temporal artery, and the one it is attached to the anterior aspect of the coronoid process right here. Now, if you see the movement, these are the two movements coming right here. The posterior aspect of the movement here, it can insert the strong tendon on the anteromedial aspect of the temporal ridge of the coronoid process, right here on the posterior aspect and the anterior level. While the second broad fan shaped tendon insert mainly on the lateral aspect of the coronoid process right here. The anterior head generally go for the anterior placement on the coronoid process, while the posterior goes more medially. When we see the clinically, it is more oriented. But when we see the temporalis muscle width, you elevate whole the fascia and you see the temporalis muscle, it is so big that it has a coverage of approximately whole the lateral aspect of the side of the head. So it is a very important horizontally and vertically, it is a big muscle with reference to the, I used to say that it is like our Balochistan, that there is less population, but it is a very good a big area. It is like Antarctica, like the big, very big area, but the population is less. It is a big muscle, but the thickness is less as compared to that of the masseter muscle. Now, when you see by removing placing the uh, right here coronoid process and placing the temporalis muscle like here, you will see some good big fan, and it is anteriorly as well as posteriorly, it is like this. And this whole area is the origin of the temporalis muscle. While we are talking of the origin, you see it's so big that right from starting from this level up to this level, this whole area is being covered. When you see the insertion you see it is on the lateral side of the coronoid process, but what you see on the inner side, it also contains its attachment to the ramus as well. So it is attached on the coronoid process interiorly and medially. Now we see this is temporalis muscle, and if we give the attachment back the zygomatic bone and see from above, you will see from down there is a deep temporal fossa, and that is the place where the movement of the coronoid process used to occur. And that is the what area is. This whole area is being covered by big fascia, that is called temporal fascia, which is also coming forward to superiorly and inferiorly to the zygoma and zygomatic arch. Ladies and gentlemen, having covered this temporalis muscle, we move to lateral pterygoid muscle. The lateral pterygoid muscle is also a very important masticatory muscle. For the temporomandibular joint and its diseases, lateral pterygoid muscle give is very important orientation. If you do not understand the lateral pterygoid muscle in detail, it is very difficult to understand the diseases of temporomandibular joint, because the lateral pterygoid muscle plays a very important role in the function of the disc, in the function of temporomandibular joint. It is short, conical in shape as compared to that of masseter muscle and the temporalis muscle. Its upper head originates from the sphenoid and the lower head originate from the pterygoid plates. This is very important. Superior head is placed in a very stationary area, that is the sphenoid area. It is give orientation more superiorly. So that means that the superior head or upper head has more orientation for the upper pull of the mandible or upper pull of the condyle. While we are talking of the lower head, it is placed medially and it is more anteriorly placed. So that is why it gives the orientation for upward as well as the forward pull of the mandible. The insertion spot at the neck of the mandible, so its more power is inserted at the main hook of the mandible, that is the condylar neck. Look at this, that this is the superior head which is attached with the pterygoid plate, and a superior head and inferior head is on the lateral aspect of the pterygoid plate. This is also the sphenoidal portion which give attachment to the superior head, and you see it is going on there and it is being inserted into articular disc. Remember very nicely, the articular disc is being attached with the superior head of the lateral pterygoid muscle, while the inferior head of the lateral pterygoid muscle is directly attached to the neck of the condyle, and it is moving to the lateral aspect of the lateral pterygoid plate. Getting the anatomical orientation in your mind, that is the temporal bone. We have cut the zygomatic arch, we have cut the coronoid process, and that is the condyle of the mandible. You see, this is the ramus, and the main thing here is, after getting the concept of the condyle, this is, you moved right here, and you see this is the long buccal nerve. That means that long buccal nerve crosses over the both heads of the lateral pterygoid muscle. So that is the lateral pterygoid muscle superior head, and that is the lateral pterygoid muscle inferior head. That is the superficial temporal artery, which we have also described in previous slide. It covers the temporal area, and that is zygomatic bone. This is the portion, by cutting the coronoid process and cutting the zygomatic bone, you can understand what is beneath it. The directly beneath muscle fibers are the superior fibers of the lateral pterygoid, inferior fibers of the lateral pterygoid, and just posterior to the um, coronoid process, you can see the long buccal nerve. This is the portion of the external carotid artery, which is also visible here, and this is the portion where the maxillary artery go inside. Now we are going, origin is right from the lateral pterygoid plate, and superior head get the origin right from the portion of the sphenoidal area and lateral pterygoid area. While in insertion, you see the upper head, it is being inserted here with the reference to disc, and lower head used to attach with the neck of the mandible right there. So two is attached right here in the inferior level, while one is attached on the superior level. That means the disc is more oriented toward the superior movement, while the mandible anterior movement is being done by the 2 or the level 2 greater portion of the lateral pterygoid muscle. Now we are getting more orientation, and this orientation is same to like that. Just the difference is that here you can see the main vessel coming here, and that is the external carotid branches. This is the basically superficial temporal artery, temporal bone, that is the condyle, mandibular condyle, and that is the inferior head of the lateral pterygoid muscle, that is the superior head of the lateral pterygoid muscle, and give the impression that this long buccal nerve crosses in between to the superior and inferior head of the lateral pterygoid muscle. Now here you can see the very good portion orientation. The small portion is number one, which is attached to the disc of the mandible. While in case of the lower head, which is a bigger head, it is attached to the neck of the mandible. This is the superficial temporal artery. This is temporal area. Zygomatic bone is cut, and that is the condyle of the mandible, which is right cut here. And that is what you see from the cadaver. Now that is the zygomatic arch. We cut the zygomatic arch. We see the lateral pterygoid plate, and this is lateral pterygoid plates contain the lateral pterygoid muscle, superior and inferior head. You see, when we give the attachment to this lateral pterygoid muscle, you see the superior head and inferior head. Superior head is directly attached to the disc, and the inferior head is directly attached to the neck of the mandible. This is the superior level, this inferior level of the lateral pterygoid plate, which give the origin. While when we are going for the inner side of the mandible, we get the orientation how it looks from the inner side. You see, from the inner side, it is uh, attached right here on the neck of the mandible, and the superior head, you understand, it is attached tied to the disc. You see, this is the inferior head, and that is the superior head. This superior head has the condylar disc right here. You see, it is attached with the superior joint space, inferior joint space, and that is what we see in the lateral pterygoid muscle. Ladies and gentlemen, after getting the concept of the lateral pterygoid muscle, we move to the medial pterygoid muscle. The medial pterygoid muscle consists of two heads. That is the superficial head, which originates from the tuberosity of the maxilla, and which gets the origin from the lateral pterygoid plate, from the both lateral pterygoid plate and medial pterygoid plates inside the portion. Now, when we go into orientation of the lateral pterygoid muscle anatomy, you see we have to cut the mandible. We have to remove the body of the mandible to see where the deep area of the medial pterygoid muscle is. This is the masseter muscle we have removed from the mandible. Here there was mandible, we have removed it. After removal of the mandible, on the medial side you can see the medial pterygoid muscle. This is the lingual nerve, which is crossing just beside to the medial pterygoid muscle. The next very important muscle, which is a nerve which is attached to the or crossed nearby to the medial pterygoid muscle, is the hypoglossal muscle, hypoglossal nerve. Sorry, these two nerves are just on the medial aspect of the lateral pterygoid muscle. This actually mylohyoid muscle is also giving its posterior aspect right here. So these are the genioglossus muscle, which we move to forward anterior mandible, and that is the tongue you can see, and that is the portion of the maxilla. This is the lingual nerve. This is hypoglossal nerve. That is the medial pterygoid muscle placed right on the medial side of the mandible. This is the cadaver dissection. You must have the orientation of the location of the medial pterygoid. While we are talking of the origin, this origin is right from here. This is the tuberosity of the maxilla, just posterior aspect of the tuberosity of the maxilla. That is the origin of the anterior fibers of the medial pterygoid, where the posterior fiber get its origin from the lateral and medial pterygoid place inside. Lateral pterygoid place, medial surface, and medial pterygoid space, lateral surface. Its whole buck is by medial pterygoid muscle origin, and insertion is right here on the angle of the mandible. That means Then when you want to pull more anteriorly, the anterior fibers which are attached more uh, forward direction, they are being activated. By the for the upward movement, when there is upward movement retired, the muscle fibers which are at the posterior aspect and the superior aspect of the lateral pterygoid, these are more active, and that is the what is required for the movement of the masseter as well. Here you see that the same picture, that is the deep lingual artery. When we dissect it deeply, it is like this, and that is the tongue. These are the tongue muscles. When you see here, that is the medial pterygoid muscle. That is the maxillary tuberosity you can see, and this is the attachment with the maxillary tuberosity last posterior portion. And lateral pterygoid plate is right here. It gives the attachment on the medial side. Whole buck is being attached with the medial pterygoid muscle, and that is the orientation of its insertion right here on the tuberosity area, right here in the pterygoid plate, and here that is the medial aspect of the angle of the mandible. Now here we see the volume, and you see that this is the area which is being covered by the medial pterygoid muscle, the anterior and the posterior head, and this is the lingual nerve which is crossing just over the muscle head. Now this is the inferior head, and the mylohyoid muscle, the mylohyoid nerve, this inferior alveolar nerve right here, and that is the nerve to mylohyoid nerve, which generally come out from the inferior alveolar nerve before entering into lingula, and that is the mylohyoid nerve. This is sphenomandibular ligament. Sphenomandibular ligament is attached over to the lingula, and this from the lingula to the sphenoid bone, it used to go there. When we see the medial pterygoid muscle, it is just medial, slightly lateral, lateral to the medial pterygoid muscle. So that is the what you say, whole the muscular area. This is middle meatus, you can see here, and like this. Now you see on the living, that is the medial pterygoid muscle on the lateral aspect, you see, and the whole the lateral and medial pterygoid plates, they are given origin, and superior level, this is the anterior portion given to the tuberosity. You see, this is the insertion of the medial pterygoid muscle right here at the medial aspect of the ramus of the mandible beneath the lingula. So by this we come to the end of the muscle of mastication. That is, we have seen all the four muscle of mastication. The accessory muscle of mastication, they are muscle that is mylohyoid, gynohyoid, and the genioglossus. These are muscles. They are actually basically the helping muscles, and they are not the directly related to the movement of the temporomandibular joint, but indirectly they give the pulling movement. Now we come to the second portion, and second portion is temporomandibular joint movements. It is a very important movement. These two important movements of rotational or hinge movement, and then the translucational movement. Translucational movement actually happen when the mouth is widely open, while the rotational or hinge movement is only when it is limited in the condylar fossa, and that only remains from 20 to 25 mm of mouth opening. Ladies and gentlemen, when you see here the craniomandibular articulation, that TMJ, is a complex body. Hinge movement All the joint which are only limited to the hinge movement are gangliomoid joint. While the gliding movement joint, they are called orthoidal joints. While the temporomandibular joint is the combination of both the movements, that is the ganglionoid as well as arthroid. So it is called gangliomo-arthroidal joint, and that is basically a complex joint which we are going to study right here. When we go for the movement of the temporomandibular joint, this is a stationary movement. It is what you say rotational movement. Here you see the superior joint space. Here you see inferior joint space. They are very less. And that is the disc, which is attached anterior to the myelo and lateral pterygoid muscle, and posteriorly it is attached to the superior and inferior laminae. When the disc opens, it takes the condyle up to the meniscus of the zygomatic arch tubercle, and up to this level the disc is moving, and with the movement of the disc, superior joint space and inferior joint space is being enlarged, and while it is the maximum movement of the joint, the disc remain right there at the meniscus level, and the condyle slightly moves forward, and the whole the joint is being stretched. Superior joint space is very much bigger, inferior joint space is slightly less, and in this whole posterior portion is being filled with the blood. So this movement is called as transitional movement. Oh, here is the picture. When this is the smaller movement, this condyle rolls within the articular disc area, and that is a rotation, and there is slight translocation while it moves forward. But basically, this head is rotating around within the mandibular fossa. While when you wide open the mouth and it comes to the transl translation movement, then it is moving anteriorly. This is the anterior level of the disc, which is 2 mm, which is the middle portion of the disc. This is 1 mm, and that is the posterior limit of the disc, which is 3 mm. Now, the maximum area for translation is in the middle portion. So it's used to glide within a middle portion. Posterior portion and anterior portion remains without any gliding stresses of the condyle, and maximum stresses are being beared by the middle portion of the condylar disc. Now the translation movement. The superior part of the joint, as the disc and the condyle, transverse anteriorly, allowing the incline of the anterior tubercle to provide an anterior and inferior movement of the mandible. That is the protrusion right there, and you see the protrusion is basically caused by the lateral pterygoid and the medial pterygoid muscle, that is this movement. Then is the hinge movement or rotatory movement, the inferior portion of the joint between the head of the condyle and lower surface of the disc to permit the opening of the joint right here. This is the just hinge movement which remains within. This is the protrusion and depression translocation, and that is the hinge movement only, which is limited to this area. Now, this is the description of the movement of the joint. You see the middle portion of the disc is the basically remains for the but the patient then joint is in this joint. This is the rotational movement. In the initial stage you see this is rotation. Now the translocation, it is moving forward, and disc is also moving forward, and that is now it is going back, and that is the now it's the rotation, and from rotation it moves forward, and that is, you see, when it moves forward, superior giant space and inferior giant space enlarges, and when it come back, the superior and inferior giant space, they are occluded. That is the normal TMJ movement. These are the posterior ligaments, they are attached. This is we say the head of the condyle, superior head, and that is the neck, and here the disc is there. This is the condyle, and this is the posterior portion of the disc. This is the anterior portion of the disc. This is middle portion of the disc, and the maximum condyle movement is with the medial portion of the disc. Now when we see it on the original joint, it moves like this. This is the posterior attachment, superior joint space, inferior joint space. This is the posterior aspect of the disc. This is medial part of the disc, and this is anterior part of the disc. The post joint spaces are enlarged when the joint opens, and when it closes, the whole the joint space is gone. This is rotation movement. That is the sliding movement. That is this come back, and it is mainly giving its movement on the middle portion of the temporomandibular disc, not the posterior portion, not the anterior portion. Mainly it rotates at the middle portion of the temporomandibular giant disc. While disc open, the superior and the inferior giant spaces, they are enlarged. While it is in the place, there is absolutely no giant space. Now, when you see on the MRI, the same picture is visible on the MRI. You see that this is the joint, this is the posterior level of the disc, this is anterior level of the disc, this is the middle portion of the disc, this is the superior giant space, this is the inferior giant space, and you see this movement is going. This is the lateral pterygoid muscle head. This is moving like this, and this is the inferior head, and that is the posterior ligaments, they are attached. This is the external acoustic meatus. This is the live MRI of the temporomandibular joint, giving you the concept of the translatory and the hinge movement. Now the mandibular movement are protruser, retractors, elevators, depressors, lateral, and movers. Now you have to remember, for your examination point of view, very much that the protruder which protrude the mandible forward, they are lateral pterygoid and medial pterygoid. The retractors, they are temporalis muscle, digastric muscle, and genioid muscle. They retract the mandible back. Elevators, they are temporalis muscle, masseter muscle, and the medial pterygoid muscle. These are elevators. While the depressors, they are lateral pterygoid, digastric, genioid, and mylohyoid. These used to depress only the small portion of the lateral pterygoid, which is the inferior head, generally slightly play a role in depression. While on lateral movement and the medial movement, that is only done by the medial and lateral pterygoid muscle. These are basically the orientation, what we say, for the movement of the muscle. You see, again, I go depression. It is done by lateral pterygoid muscle, digastric, genioid, mylohyoid. Elevation, temporalis, masseter, medial pterygoid. Protrusion, lateral pterygoid, medial pterygoid. Retraction, generally posterior fibers of the temporalis muscle. Sometimes digastric do appear. Now this is the very good picture. Try to understand it. This is retraction. Retraction is right here. That is the pterygoid muscle, and that is going on retraction. Elevation. This is one elevated, that is temporalis muscle. Second elevated, medial pterygoid. Third elevator is the masseter muscle. You see 1, 2, 3. These three muscles are used for elevation. Then is protrusion. There are three muscles for protrusion. Number 1, lateral pterygoid. Number 2, medial pterygoid. Number 3, masseter. Protrusion muscle, lateral pterygoid, medial pterygoid, and masseter. Depression only lateral pterygoid muscle plays some role in depression. Otherwise, no other muscle of mastication play an important role in depression. So depression is only by this way. Medial torsion, side to side movement towards midline, and lateral torsion, side to side movement from away from the midline. It is done by the medial and lateral pterygoid muscle. Ladies and gentlemen, that's end for the temporomandibular joint, all the movements. If you look at this picture, you will come to know that all the muscle of mastication, they are the protrusion, lateral pterygoid, medial pterygoid, masseter muscle, temporalis muscle, and they are accessory muscle which are attached right here. So with that, we end the temporomandibular joint anatomy in detail, and we have the last session. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much on behalf of the International College of Dentists and also for the International Dental Society. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any question, I am here to answer. It is over to the organizer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arshad. We felt a pleasure to have you in the 3 sessions. It was very nice presentation. And
Dr.
if anyone,
Rehan,
yes,
it is over to you.
can you hear me?
Dr. Rehan.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, we can listen. If you have any question, I am here to answer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arshad, for your kind. And if anyone has any question, kindly put in chat box. I will forward to Dr. Arshad and he will answer, inshallah. Do anyone have any question?
Yes, I can see that Dr. Farooq is also here.
Yeah. So there is a question.
Yeah.
Can TMJ dislocation cause paresthesia of tongue as well?
That do cause the paresthesia of the tongue as well, because temporomandibular joint is placed just near to foramen ovale. While there is repeated dislocation, it used to hurt the medial side as well. And the medial side is the foramen ovale, where all the branches of the temporal nerve, trigeminal nerve is used to emerge. And that nerve is basically mandibular nerve. This mandibular nerve has 3 branches, that is buccal branch, lingual branch, and inferior alveolar branch, which is emerging from the foramen ovale. One branch more is there, that is the motor branch, which supplies all muscle of mastication. Because these 3 branches, they are sensory branches, they are coming side by side to each other. When there is dislocation of the temporomandibular joint, generally there is always trauma for the long standing opening of the mandible, And what happens that the medial pterygoid muscle have to remain many ways open for the long time. So what happens, it gives stresses to the myelin sheath, which is just present over the muscle fiber. And this myelin sheath also attached to the lingual nerve. And this lingual nerve become under stress for the longer time, and if it is repeatedly under the stress by the dislocation of the it results into paresthesia of the tongue. Yes.
So there is next question. Comment on the role of retrodiscal ligament in TMJ movements.
Retrodiscal ligaments are the very important ligaments, because retrodiscal ligaments has the nerve supply, has the vascular supply, and up till the limit that when the retrodiscal ligaments they are united and they are not dislodged, that they are not teared, there is no pain in the temporomandibular joint. When there is the tearing of the posterior aspect of the retrodiscal ligaments and their attachment is lost, or there is under stress, or there is any inflammatory lesion in that area, or there is any sclerosis or fibrosis in that area, that results into limited movement of the joint, and that is giving hurt to the disc, and that results into severe pain. That's why the retrodiscal ligaments are very important for the normal orientation of temporomandibular joint.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arshad. I think there is no more question. You were with us in 3 continuous sessions. We have now over with anatomy of TMJ. Hope so we will continue towards next session with Professor Dr. Arshad Mahmood Malik in TMDs, temporomandibular and dysfunction syndromes.
Now our series of the temporomandibular joint in Shala, it will continue, because temporomandibular joint series is a huge lecture of 100 lectures series, and just we have gone for 3 lectures only, and these 3 lectures are just a drop of water in the sea, which you have seen just a temporomandibular joint anatomy, and that I have covered the anatomy just for students. It is I have omitted many things with reference to postgraduate studies and postgraduate references. I have not gone in detail with that reference. I have summarized this slides just for the student purpose, that it should not be more busy one. So we are going to, next time we are going to cover the diseases of the temporomandibular joint, and from here we will start the how many diseases there are temporomandibular joint, and step by step we will move to the temporomandibular, just simple inflammation, up to the severe temporomandibular joint, like trauma, like fracture, like ankylosis, and going up to the temporomandibular joint tumors and their surgical aspects. So this whole series of the temporomandibular joint is covering 2 years. So we will try to cover as much as early we can, but we will move step by step, and next time we are going to start with the temporomandibular joint diseases.
Inshallah, sir. So thank you so much. If anyone has missed any part, this lecture will be available on our YouTube channel with the same name, AID, Association of International Dentistry, and you can follow our page on Facebook also with the same name, Association of International Dentistry, AID. And hope so. If you have still any question, we will ask Dr. Arshad and he will answer you in the next session on the behalf of these old lectures. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Hafiz.
Hafiz.